Not a bad set of numbers there. Let's unpack today's market movements now with Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers. Good afternoon, or may I say good evening, Makwe. Thank you for joining us as we wrap the markets this afternoon here on Today on eNCA. What were some of the big movements on the market today?
I think what we've seen is that those disappointing Chinese PMI numbers, we've seen PMI for manufacturing contracting, and we've seen for non-manufacturing substantially decreasing. And now we know that this is the buyer when it comes to our commodities. So as a result, if the economy is not growing, then there won't be demand. And also it tells us that whatever they've done so far as stimulus is concerned, it was only limited. They still have to do more. And also confirms that major trading partners outside them are struggling. And now we've seen that had a negative impact when it comes to our resources, as we sell most of our resources to them. And as a result, we've seen the GSE also going down because our resources were down almost 2%.
Yeah, and today we saw Eskom releasing its annual results. We do know that currently, of course, it's under that debt relief program that the government announced last year.
I guess it was expected, number one, if you look into this as a real business, you are saying, guys, you have not been selling, because you had load shedding. So as a result, if you are not selling, then revenue is going to go down and your costs are keeping going up. So definitely there's no way you will be able to make money. And also it continues to be a concern that for you guys to get out of your troubles, you need to be bailed out. It cannot work like that, because the fact of the matter is that you should be able to generate enough so that your sales can go up and people can pay you. Yes, we know they've got challenges when it comes to municipalities which are not paying them. So I think Eskom's story is one that they themselves know that it's all because of their own doing as a result, because most of the things are not new. They've been there with them. They could have attended to this. Look, now as we're talking, we don't even have a permanent CEO. What do we call that?
Yeah, I mean, not the only company to report results, of course, it's a public entity. We saw in a trading statement, Astral announcing their losses, that their losses will be even greater.
All because of Eskom. These guys, for the year, they've spent almost 1.9 billion just on load shedding cost, and forget about the bird flu. And now if a company is worth almost 6.2 billion and they're expected to spend almost 1.9 billion on load shedding, definitely it's going to eat onto their profits. I mean, per month, the guys are looking at plus minus 45 million rands, and all because of Eskom. And since these guys were listed in 2001, this is for the first time ever that they're making a loss, and all because of Eskom.
Yeah, we saw another big announcement today, Makwe, Woolworths acquisition of Absolute Pets.
It's about time. Woolworths at some point announced that they also want to move into the townships. I'm mentioning that to say that the guys have decided to start competing with Checkers, as we've seen that Checkers has been eating some of their market share, especially on the higher LSM. And as we're talking now, Checkers, they've got almost 67 premium pet shops. So also it makes sense for them as Woolworths to acquire Absolute Pets so that they can compete with them. And it's very interesting to say that Woolworths customers are taking their pets that serious, that as they shop for their groceries, they also want to shop for their pets.
Yeah, and the selection there at Woolies for pet food is not as wide as you can get at Absolute Pets. Some people who love animals will say that's a brilliant move, especially if you've got that Woolies card. Now, lastly, Makwe, tomorrow it's a medium-term budget policy statement in Parliament. Well, it's a midway, where it's like a review, what has happened since February and ahead of next year, February. Two things. I mean, next year is a big election year in the country, as we know, 30 years of democracy. But whatever was promised in the 2023 to 2024 budget in February might not really be realizable. Expenditure currently sitting at around 51% so far, but we don't know what the future holds. But it's tough times. What do you expect of market reaction to what might come out tomorrow?
I think the markets, we have almost baked almost all of the bad news. We know that revenue collection has not been that great. We know that we've got a huge deficit. We have seen some of the directives that the Treasury have sent out that you must not fill up the new post, you must continue to cut on spending, and it's worrisome when you start cutting on the likes of infrastructure. Remember, this was one of the things that the guys were using to try to stimulate the economy. But I think generally what we need to see is for the government government to do what they're supposed to do. That is to create an environment where businesses can continue to flourish, where the current guys who are operating back home can get the money they've put into the banks and invest into the economy before we can even get the foreign companies coming into our country. Because the only way to get out of these troubles is to make sure that your economy grow so that you can continue to collect more revenue, as we've seen during the commodity boom, that the guys managed to collect enough and they could even spend on other things. So they just have to make sure that the environment is conducive. So we'll be looking forward to see that. Do they have a new plan to make sure that the environment is that conducive? Because we cannot forever continue to borrow, and we've seen that the previous borrowers have just been going on consumption instead of investment.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because if you borrow, your service costs to service that debt, they go up. And currently our debt to GDP ratio is about 70%. Thank you very much, Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers, helping us to wrap up the market movement, some of the stories, and of course, looking ahead a little bit to that midterm budget speech that will be delivered tomorrow afternoon by the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana. A lot is riding on this midterm budget, unlike previous ones, especially because it's going to be indicating what's the way forward with next year's budget in February in an election year. Many commentators not expecting anything rosy. It's a tough one. We're going to have to wait and see how Mr. Godongwana will be balancing the books, as they say. Well, this is it for today.